No, that's the guts of it. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll just add that, Councillor Parvanoff, I'm not sure if you saw that Mr. Jefferson's come back and will provide you with further advice when he has the availability to do that. With respect to your specific question around the amended consent conditions, but yeah, Mr. Chair, you're right. The whole point of the fast track is to kind of fast track, I guess, and to kind of minimise inputs and indeed appeals. So I guess, like it or not, that's the intent of that particular option for consenting, and that's what we're seeing at the moment.
So if I can make comment, I certainly understand that, you know, the fast track process is a case where it cannot be relitigated, but I suppose what I'm really seeking is information which Mr. Jefferson is going to look into, and that's actually knowing what those changes in the conditions are. So when you actually go onto the EPA website, you can actually see the exact details of the conditions that have been set by the panel, whereas now we're in a situation where KCDC have made some changes or have agreed to some changes, but we don't actually know specifically what they are, except in the particular areas that I mentioned. So it's not about relitigating, it's actually understanding what the changes are. And I think obviously there are some environmental, stormwater and wastewater changes, which, you know, I think are important to understand for our community.
So through you, Mr. Chair, and just to help Councillor Parvanoff, I've been, like I'm sure my colleagues have, been privy to the elected members bulletin since the applicant had his resource consent issued, and it's not hard to reference the amendments being sought by the applicant, whether it's through Kapiti Coast District Council or the Wellington Regional Council. It's all public information, and cross-reference that back to the EPA consent. And then from my knowledge, and I've looked into a couple of them, there's nothing erroneous in there. So
yeah, yes. So
I'm not sure why that would need to be litigated through the community board.
It's not litigated. So that's exactly what I've done, Tonchi. In my email, I laid out the areas that have been changed, but you know, unless you have got more inside information, I actually don't know what those specific changes are.
Well, again, I reference you back to the document. They're all a specific clause, and any amendments reference a clause to the original consent. Yep. And that consent number is or item number rather, for lack of better description, is itemised in the resource consent conditions. So, for example, yeah.
So if I can intervene here, it might be more helpful if council staff can support Jocelyn in the reconciliation process in regard to the changes. Like Tonchi indicated, some of those changes are outlined in the consent. I don't know if it's worth the community board trying to relitigate some of those changes that have been made. Our potential to change those is insignificant or nothing, is my understanding. I think that would probably be a better process to confirm that.
I tend to agree with that.
If it helps, Mr. Chair, Mr. Jefferson has offered to come back with some advice, so I'm catching up with him tomorrow morning. I can just make sure that he does that by way of email. So,
Mike, maybe if the Somerset are coming to our next community board meeting, that some of that and a supporting staff member can be available to support that discussion when they come and talk to us.
Sure, yeah. Understanding that we're not relitigating, it's just to help understand.
Yeah. No, I, you know, it's not our purview to relitigate any of those issues, but what it is to seek a greater understanding, and if they can maybe describe those in a fashion.
Oh, hi, Mandy. It's Tracy from the Waikanae Community Board.
Understand.
Oh, hi. You're in.
So just to follow up too, I see in the minutes of the last meeting that they're actually going to come along to this meeting. Were they not available?
Council, they've agreed to come to a future meeting. I haven't actually nailed down exactly which one, but I can make sure they come along to the June one. It sounds like the most appropriate one for them to come along to. But there's no issue with them with their availability. It's just a matter of which one we would like them to come to.
Are we likely to be quite busy on the June one? We've got the capital distribution and getting rid of all our money. It's usually a long one.
Sorry, no, I'm being facetious, Richard. I don't know. I think it would be helpful for the Waikanae community if we can manage the meeting and that's finish the discussion and manage the conversations with regards to the applicants and the capital improvement, and at least attempt to maintain the meeting within a 2-hour time frame.
I mean, does the meeting have to be at a community board meeting, or can it be at council chambers with the invitation to the community board members? Would be my preference.
That would be better for me.
Yes.
I think Somerset would probably prefer that too, potentially.
Yes. Was that something you can arrange, Mike?
Yeah, no worries. I'll talk to Joe and jack that up.
Cool.
If the wishes, yep.
That might be a little bit less politically risky for them as well. So.
Yeah, we don't want to have the public in there yelling and screaming at them.
Well,
we'll leave that to Tonchi.
Well, there's a lot of effects in the community that would probably might hijack the meeting if that's the case. So, okay, so Mike, can we agree that you'll coordinate a meeting with Tracy for the next community board meeting that we can meet with Somerset?
Yes.
Perfect.
Just to clarify, so the next community board meeting, or is a separate briefing?
This will be a separate briefing.
Okay.
So, Mike, it might be helpful. You referred to Joe. Is that Somerset Joe, or?
Yeah, so he's the guy that was the site manager, but may not be the right. He's just my go-to guy to talk to with respect to Somerset.
So, relative to the questions that Councillor Pravanov may have and others, it might be prudent to ask them who would front up.
Yeah, the right person. The
right persons. Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Chair, if this is an opportune time, I'll just let you know that Mandy Savage has been able to enter the meeting when you're ready to go back to that item.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. What we might do is just finish off the elected members' business, and I'll move to the ratification of the submission. Just to let the community board members know, I've put it forward as submission to council with regards to the changes to the district plan that outlined impacts on the Waikanae Beach community. I haven't shared that all with you yet. I shall share that. I've had confirmation that it was looking at the impact on Waikanae Beach and areas particularly with concerns around the intensification, and also the loss of the special interest areas that we've got in Waikanae Beach and the Waikanae Garden area. So I'll put that forward for ratification at the next meeting. So if we can move to Mandy Savage's public speaking time, agenda item 4. Hi Mandy, how are you?
Kia ora everyone. Thank you for being so flexible. All right, if I jump in now?
That's absolutely fine, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm here to speak to our grant application, yet again trying to improve our garden, our beautiful garden, which is a sanctuary for patients, staff and volunteers, many of whom are Waikanae residents, including myself. We've found our garden a great way for people who might not necessarily engage with the Cancer Society to come in and be with us. On a good day, indeed, some people have their counselling sessions outside. But due to changes in the traffic light level and the age and demographic of our volunteers, it needs a bit of love. And we're hoping that we can actually get some working bees going now we're back at Orange, and we do need to pay for some tip fees. So, you know, the practical stuff, the maintenance stuff needs to be taken care of. We'd like to upgrade some irrigation. We'd like to buy some veggies. We donate our veggies in the community to our patients, our volunteers, and the food bank, the veggies that are left. And if there's anything left in the grant, we're aiming to plant some fruit trees. So again, we can extend what we offer our patients in our community. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. And if anyone's got any questions about either the Cancer Society or our community garden, then happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions from the community board members?
No, not from me.
Thank you.
Richard? Michelle?
No.
Jocelyn?
No, thank you.
No, thank you, Mandy. In terms of, I believe that the Waikanae Community Board's previously been a good supporter of the
Yes.
Cancer Society in the past, and you know, you don't need to remain on the conference call. Your participation in the future discussions won't affect the outcome, but you're very welcome to listen to any discussion later on this evening that community board members might have. I don't have any particular questions. I think your application is quite clear in terms of its request.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandy. Tracy, do we have, I saw the email with regards to one of the other applicant not being able to attend. Is that absolutely confirmed, or?
Yes, I can confirm that the other applicant won't be speaking to his application, her application this evening.
Application, okay. Just in terms of for due process, do any community board members have any points of discussion that they'd like to discuss with regards to the application? Michelle.
Just had one question actually about the Cancer Society. I know that if they're applying for funding from another community board, they can't apply for funding from another community board for the same initiative. Are we sure that they haven't applied for funding from the other community boards?
Historically, some applicants will put bids forward for a number of community boards for a request for funding. It's not uncommon for applicants to approach, say, for example, the Paraparaumu Raumati and maybe Aotearoa community board. So it's not unusual. The total quantum of funding is approximately, that's been requested of us, is a third of the total complement. Mandy might be able to respond with regards to how much has been requested from other community boards and whether it has been approved.
Sure. Okay. So in the past, we've made an unsuccessful application to Paikakariki Community Board. We have had a successful, I think, one successful application in the past to Paraparaumu Raumati Community Board. And we have indeed applied last year, I think, for the grant for the patient products cabinet. So we have applied to the Waikanae Community Board in the past, and we were successful.
Yeah. And with regards to the Paraparaumu Raumati Community Board that's got received, were they funded?
Yes.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Michelle?
No, because it's specific to the actual grant put forward for today. It's not about other grants, which are obviously, so it's very specific to the one that the initiative, so the garden. Yeah. So just to clarify, Mandy, that you're not, if I may, seeking grants from other community boards for the purchase for the garden upgrade?
No, we're not. No.
Thank you.
No, that's my understanding. And if you want, I can actually double check that with our grants officer in Wellington.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe Waikanae residents are quite considerable users of the Cancer Society. So whilst it might appear to be that the Waikanae Community Board might be supporting the Cancer Society, I believe the Cancer Society offers a very credible and capable service, particularly for the residents of Waikanae and the demographic within our community. So we're probably, as a cohort of residents, a greater proportion of their, what would you call it, patronage. So do I have any other questions with regards to any of the grants there? Or particularly, Michelle, are you satisfied with the response you've had?
Actually,
I can't hear you.
It is just to say that in our criteria, it does state that what the eligibility purposes are. So recognising that our users in the future will use it, I do think we need to be, if we're going to suggest that the criteria needs to be changed or might be flexible, then we should be clear in our criteria. In eligible purposes, point 4, which is page 11, appendix 1.
Yeah, this has been made under the discretionary grants application, so there's a bit more flexibility there. With regards to,
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, thanks.
So, I am a big supporter of the Cancer Society, and it's something that, I think, and given Waikanae residents are of a demographic that's a lot more likely to be affected by cancer than, say, Paparooma or Raumati or Otaki. I believe that the work they undertake is, more likely to benefit our community than some of the others. So I personally, on that account, I don't have any issue with regards to the Waikanae, from my perspective, supporting the Cancer Society. But we can discuss that a bit further on when we discuss applications.
Mr. Chair, I noticed that Councillor Provanov has her hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, I can't see that at the moment. So. Okay, Jocelyn.
Thanks, Tracy. So I actually wanted to ask the questions, specific questions to Mandy about what, rather than hypothesise, I suppose, what percentage of Waikanae residents do utilise the facilities. What percentage of Waikanae residents would use your facilities, Mandy?
Okay. So our Waikanae residents use a range of our services. I'd have to check the exact stats, but as a percentage, as James mentioned, as a percentage of Kapiti residents, they are quite heavy users, particularly our driving service. So we run a free driving service. We have volunteers that transport patients to treatment anywhere in the Wellington region, and that's hugely popular within the Waikanae community. We have a free nurse here 20 hours every week, and Waikanae residents are very, very, a large number of them actually do use that service. They will either pop down and make appointments with Hillary, or they'll have a phone consult. In terms of advocacy, a lot of our Waikanae residents would use our advocacy services, and we also have, as you'll be aware, a lot of elder orphans in our Waikanae community. Our nurse will receive phone calls from Australia, emails from the UK, mum or dad or family member lives in Waikanae, has cancer, and they're accessing our services on behalf of their elderly parents to get that support. Counselling as well is a popular option for Waikanae residents. We have up to 4 free counselling sessions. We also have probably slightly less used in Waikanae, and we do discretionary grants around food, petrol, other things that people might need. As you're well aware, cancer makes you poor. Not everyone has unlimited sick leave, and not everyone has health insurance. And we are finding some families are doing it incredibly tough at the moment. So on a case-by-case basis, our nurse and our supportive care team would aim to support those whānau as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy, for that. Do any other community board members have any questions? So the way I've got my screen, I can't see whether people have got their hands up or not, I'm afraid.
Councillor Pravanov, your hand is still up. Ah, and now it is not.
Okay, so that draws to a conclusion to public speaking time. If we move to the consideration of applications for funding, and we can probably move to the first applicant, and then we'll move to the Cancer Society. So do I have a mover for the model recommendation for the discretionary fund of $500 by Nandi Ambler with regards to the cost of representing New Zealand as a member of the Shakespeare Globe Centre New Zealand Young Shakespeare Company 2022?
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Michelle? All those in favour?
Aye.
Sorry, any discussion, I should say. No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's carried. With regards to model recommendation, that the Waikanae Community Board approves the discretionary fund of $500 to the Cancer Society of New Zealand Wellington Division to assist in the cost of creating a landscaped multi-purpose garden at the Paraparaumu premises for use by clients and their visitors. Do I have a mover?
Yes.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? No. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried. Thank you. And thank you, Sandy, for participating tonight. And hopefully we can see some good things come from the Cancer Society. If we can move to reports amendment road names in Manu Park 6.2 on page 26. Mike, I presume you'll be speaking to this, or have we got somebody from that's going to talk through?
I'll have to speak to it, Mr. Chair, just briefly. But unfortunately, as is evident from the report, the last hurdle when naming roads and streets is at Land Information New Zealand. And with two of the names that the board recommended last time don't meet their threshold because they're too close to other names. So unfortunately, we're having to come back to the board to ask for you to revisit those recommendations with a view to selecting other names for those two roads, being Tiake and Miro, which are too close to Tiako and Miro Road. So it does raise some questions for us about the process and why this hurdle is at the very end. And we'll look at that, and apologies for that. But in the meantime, we would appreciate if the board could please reconsider and select other names for those two streets.
Yeah. Thank you. And so, in terms of moving forward, the options that are put forward, I'll take it as the paper is read. We've got three options there. I don't propose to relitigate the benefits or the preference of each of those. Can I have a sort of a raising of hands, please, with regards to support for option one, please, from community board members? Richard. Michelle, or
virtual
Jocelyn?
Raise hands, or
Physical's easier because I can't. It's not working with me with the seeing your hands up or not at the moment. Thank you. Okay, so unfortunately, I'm going to express my ignorance in how to pronounce option one. Is Tuaterawai? Is that how you say it?
Oh, I think, Mr. Chair, you might have jumped ahead one. We're on section 13 first. Pihoi.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mike. I have jumped ahead. I've gone to the second option. Okay, so I had Tonchi, Richard, Michelle, and Jocelyn. I didn't see your physical hand. Was that?
Yeah, I'm ambivalent about, it doesn't worry me about any of the names particularly.
Okay. It looks like we've got a preference for option 1. And okay, so moving to item 14 in this paper, we've got option 1, 2, and 3. This is where my ignorance with Mallory pronunciation Tuawai. Is that how you pronounce that?
Tuawai.
Tuawai. And then you've got Mollymore Close and Wattlebird Close. Do I have could I have a raise of hands, please, with regards to option 1? Sorry, Richard, I've tried putting up something. 3. Okay, option 1. That's all. Okay, well, that's a simple one then. Okay, so if we could move to model recommendation from the Waikanae Community Board, if we support option 1 for road 3 and option 1 for road 7. Do I have a mover for that?
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Michelle, thank you. Do I have any discussion? All those in favour? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Mike, it would be good for next time that we have these put forward. Hopefully we can iron out some of the issues with regards to having to relitigate the road naming, and maybe it's a bit of a lesson for how we approach these in future, that we don't get caught out. But thank you very much, and hopefully the developer can conclude their road naming processes. Okay, so if we can move to agenda item 7.1, confirmation of the minutes. I'll take the minutes as read. Do we have a mover that they are a true and accurate record of the discussion about March 15th meeting?
I'll move that.
Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder?
Mr. Chair, I will second it, but I have some questions.
Yeah. So can you elaborate on those, Wilson?
Would you like Mr. you to start asking me? So I just wanted to clarify the discussion that we had about the Waimanu Lagoons focus group. So when you actually look at the resolution, it doesn't actually say in here that the recommendation was incorrect, but basically it wasn't going to be carried forward, or it wasn't actually approved. Because I think
what page are you on, Jocelyn, for quick? Page 34.
34.
Yeah.
34. Yeah, so in here, there was lots, so in that recommendation, in many respects, that's fine, but I suppose in the context of the discussion, there's nothing in there that actually says that the recommendation that was put forward was an old version, and that it wasn't, and that's the reason why it wasn't accepted. So if you look at the recommendation, it's got that the Waikanae Community Board leads the decision making regarding the Waimanu Lagoons terms of reference to the Waimanu Lagoons focus group. But I think it needs somewhere in there, it needs to actually really say that the recommendation that was put to the community board wasn't accepted because it was an old version and that they were going to look at it. I just need to tie off that loop, and I think that's probably why it came to the council meeting, because it wasn't clear that it had actually been turned down.
I think, if my memory serves me well, is that the appropriate conclusion to that, whilst the board didn't accept the recommendation, actually the simple methodology to resolve this was that the Waikanae, the focus group would determine its terms of reference and let them operate itself. So I don't know if it's materially going to add any benefit to council, highlighting that that we didn't accept the proposal, because it's.
So I suppose the motion, the recommendation was, I can't remember the recommendation now, it was either was that you either
approve the terms of reference.
And so basically that it wasn't actually covered off to say that. It doesn't have to be probably so much in a recommendation, but just in some of the wordings, in some of the comments that are made beforehand about it. Because if someone, I'm just thinking about, if someone actually goes back later on and looks at these minutes, they will not actually know, they cannot figure out where this landed in relation to that recommendation that was put forward at the last community board meeting. So I've got nothing, in terms of the way that it landed last time, no problem with that at all. It's just that including something in the minutes which occurred to actually basically say that the recommendation wasn't well, actually it's not actually agreeing to it, it's actually endorsing that recommendation, because that was I don't know, the wrong version, or I don't know, something or other. It was the wrong version.
I've not seen that approach taken at council meetings though, Jocelyn, with regards to something's been disregarded, but the actual what was resolved is reflected in the minutes. So Tracy, you might be able to help me out there, but I haven't seen the agreement or the proposal put forward when I've been participating in council meetings in the past. Normally it's just what was resolved at the meeting. Jocelyn, I don't have any particular axe to grind on it. I don't know if it's adding any value. What was resolved is that we're letting the group determine its own terms of reference as opposed to what was put forward. I think an astute reader will pick that up if they read the papers and then see what's been resolved. It looks like actually they're actually determining, no, they haven't accepted the paper, but what they have resolved is. Sorry, if I put this to discussion, really, in some ways to other board members, and I don't want to hijack the idea, but I'm not sure it's going to add a lot of materiality to what's been resolved.
For you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that the minutes are there to record the decisions made, not necessarily the discussion that sat behind the decision that was ultimately made.
No, thank you. That's my understanding too, Tracy.
Yeah. So the minutes, I've just pulled up now the agenda of the last Waikanae Community Board meeting. And it says that the Waikanae Community Board accept the proposed membership structure of that form as part of the terms of reference, blah, 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 blah. And so we never actually said yes or no to that, even though we did. We didn't formally do it, but we did that outside a formal recommendation, and that's not reflected in the minutes.
Once again, through you, Mr. Chair, we don't necessarily record recommendations that weren't put and therefore weren't carried.
So it's even if it's written in the agenda.
Mike can probably confirm, but my understanding. I'll let Mike speak.
Thanks, Tracy. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but I did provide some advice in the meeting, which was summarised very briefly in the paragraph above the resolution where I advised you that there was no requirement for the board to be involved in the decision making. So having worked with Tracy on the minutes, I kind of felt that that it adequately covered the decision. But leave it to you, Mr. Chair, if the board chooses otherwise.
Yeah, I'm personally happy to leave what's there, but if other community board members feel compelled to reflect that model recommendation was left on the table, that can be noted in the minutes. Do any other board members have any compelling requests for that to be reflected?
I don't. I know there's quite a discussion on the community board on page 31 or page 1 of the minutes. So.
I think you're right, Richard. Yeah. So
yeah, I suppose my point is that if someone was trying to figure out what the makeup of the group was, that could not be ascertained from these minutes, and I suppose so then it goes on to council, and as it stood when it did go to council recently and was pulled out, it actually had the whole list of the membership.
But that wasn't approved.
I agree with that, but that's what was put forward to the council meeting, for councillors to note. Basically, and so it's all very confusing because it's been drawn through. There's been assumption that was actually, well, I don't know how it happened, but it's a case of where it had gone from nothing to having a whole list of things, and I'm not sure quite what is actually going to happen next when it goes to the next council meeting. I don't know whether Mike, you have any comment about
I think that might be just an administrative issue there, but I think if I go back to the premise of the intention of the minutes is to record the resolutions that have been made, and I believe that that's accurately reflected in the community board minutes there. If you, I don't know, Jocelyn, Tonche and Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and being part of this group, I must say that I apologised for the meeting last week because I was ill. But there seems to be this willingness to or desire to bolt on and armour up not only this focus group but others around the the district. But what I'm seeing is since our last community board meeting is a better relationship working with council operational staff, which is pleasing, and then that conduit is in place. There's the question of the management plan, which is the overarching document which guides us all, council and all the stakeholders for all our reserves district wide, and that's a work in progress at the moment. Not just Waimanu Lagoon, but all the parks and reserves. And so I'm not quite sure, Councillor Pravanov, where you're trying to take this, but we sort of thrashed it out at the last community board meeting. Subsequently, we have been introduced to the new parks and reserve manager. There's relationship building going on, and one hopes ongoing. Simultaneously, staff are working with management plans, and there's a lot of them, isn't there, Mike? So, yeah, and I think the focus group is grateful for being brought out of the wilderness and not having that conduit and connectivity to their council. So That's all got a lot better. And there's work to do, but this armouring it up and trying to make it something that it's not should probably cease. It's a community interest group relative to neighbours and residents and stakeholders that reside close to this feature, who have an interest in the reserve, and there's, in good faith, that group is supposed to work with the council, the gatekeeper of this reserve, and for a little while it hasn't been happening for various reasons. So I don't really have any issues with it right now. The meetings are happening. The conduit has been sort of provided there with a connection to council. The management plan is a work in progress, and we should keep an eye on that, and other reserves like Farazin, and if there's another in our district or more. But beyond that, and of course, as per the minutes that I'm sure Tracy has shared with you, that group submitted to yesterday to the district plan, the amendments to the district plan, and because it has impacts on areas of those, areas of that reserve. But beyond that, I'm not sure where council's going with it.
Thank you, Tanchi. Michelle, do you have any comments?
If the comment was just in relation to how the minutes have been recorded, I'm happy with the way it's set out. I think the points that Richard made, that there's other information earlier on, is fine. I'm perfectly okay with how we've captured the discussion.
Okay, Jocelyn, I'm just going to go by the views sought by the board there, that will leave it as it stands. I understand your concerns, but I think if you're reading the minutes and you look at what's been resolved, you can conclude how we've come to that decision. I don't think it needs to describe, the terms of reference in the meeting.
Yeah. So, I don't disagree with anything that Tonchi has said in terms of, the way that the focus group is now operating. But I suppose, when that item came on the agenda at the last minute, it was very confusing as to what the terms of reference were. And I suppose I was just wanting to have something in there to provide more clarity for the next time around when this comes up again. And and that's not been set.
Councillor Pravanov, I think we have to accept also that the previous representative, Jeremy, he fell ill, and he was part of that group and everything and that. So a lot of the work that he was doing, and he was the conduit with the focus group to the community board, and he was working diligently with them, but he fell ill, and then a lot of it got lost in the wilderness, so, and as for the terms of reference and everything, I mean, the group is working right now.
I agree.
I'm not sure. We're trying to clip on and armour it up to something that it, possibly shouldn't be, and it's sucking a lot of our time, a lot of staff's time.
Yeah. Okay. So taking that into note, do I have a mover for the minutes being a true and accurate record of that Waikanae Community Board meeting on the 15th of March?
Actually,
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. Yeah.
I already have it recorded that Richard moved it and Councillor Pravanov seconded it.
Okay. So we've had the discussion. So all those, any other comments?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I actually have another question, and this is a process thing as well. On page 33, so Margaret Stevenson Wright has resigned from the community board, and she's She's been invited to stay on the group. I'm actually just wondering whether or not, you know, how that, you know, whether or not we have to, you know, whether we have to approve anything or whether we just note that or accept it, or whether we just leave it how it is. Because I know previously we've when members of the community of that focus group and probably the Waimanu one have actually put their names forward, we've accepted those positions.
I guess it comes down to the same issue with regards to the issue of the terms of reference and participants in the group. You know, if we take the same premise that we've just made with regards to the Waimanu Lagoons terms of reference and letting them make their own decisions, does that mean that we now need to make the same assessment with regards to the Farrens and Reserve and let them determine their own terms of reference? But it depends if she's a voting member. If she's not a voting member and just a participant, it makes no difference, Jocelyn.
Yeah, it's just that I'm, you know, I suppose, I think things are a bit muddled in terms of, because I know for a fact that when that Thousand Reserve was set up, we had to approve all the members, and I know that when at times new members have come on board, they've been approved as well by the community board. But you know, maybe the one is slightly different. I don't know. So they all have different terms of references. Well, it's not terms of references. It's membership. It's membership. Terms of reference are different.
No, it's not. The terms of reference determine the membership typically. So
it includes it.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with the terms of reference of the Farrers and.
Oh, you were on it, weren't you? You were on it. You were on. You remember.
I wouldn't remember that level of detail, Jocelyn.
Okay.
In terms of DO.
Yep.
So
that's why I'm bringing up this point. But anyway, if people are happy with how the wording is, that's fine.
Okay. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's carried. Thank you. If we move to our last item on the agenda, which is matters under action, and I might this, and then we can have maybe use this as a point of discussion and go through each of these. There's been some important updates on some of the material on here, and Mike, maybe you can elaborate there.
Sure. So would you like me just to quickly race through what the highlights are, and then yeah, okay. So yeah, just
sorry, Mike, just with regards to timing, like we're well ahead of schedule and it's a pretty light agenda. So, and I think it would be really handy if we can go through the library and Mahara Gallery, the temporary toilets in some decent detail for the board, so we've got some visibility about what's happening there.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll take the report as read, but just to update the board, so you'll notice a difference in the way that we have the style that we have updated you on the library and the Mahara Gallery. Just so you're aware, that's because we've cut this wording directly out of the monthly project management office reports that we get on the senior leadership team. So what we've tried to do is give you exactly the same information that the senior leadership team gets. What that means is that it's sometimes it's a bit clunky, and there might be the odd abbreviation that we need to explain, but we actually think it's a reasonable thing for us to do, to share that exactly the same information that we report to the executive, to the board. In fact, we can't think why we would want to actually give you anything else. So we've done that for the library and for the gallery. There is an ongoing issue that Tonchi raised last time about the ongoing operating expenditure for the gallery. We are still working through that, but making good progress, and I'll be happy to report to the board when we're ready to bring that to a conclusion.
Mike, can I just chip in there? So just to bring a bit of clarification, and just for the other board members, I'll remind the board members that when we talked to the gallery, or the gallery talked to us as well as council about their temporary premises, a lot of a lot of additional cost has come because of their temporary placement in Mahara Place. We're all aware of that, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So it's so there's mechanisms to why there's there's a deficit, and it's not long term. It's a correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. It's over the next 12 months, whilst they're on temporary premises.
No, so that's definitely an issue, Tonchi, but actually there's going to be an ongoing issue as well. That's the substantive issue that we're working through. And I prefer not to go into detail just yet because we haven't actually landed anything, but there's a long-term issue as well with the operating cost and what we have budgeted. So that's the substantive issue that we're currently in discussion with Janet.
Okay.
And,
yeah, that's a two-pronged, yes.
Yeah. And just to finish on that box, so the temporary toilet you will have seen is installed. In fact, I was going to ask if you're okay with us actually deleting that from the matters under action, given that the Exeter is actually already in place. Appreciating there's some landscaping still to be done, but that's linked to the gallery. So that's number one, Mr. Chair. Do you want to have a general discussion about that?
So just with regards to the library, it's because I've been excluded because apparently my perceived conflict of interest. So I'd be interested to understand, the base options and where they're going and where we are and where we are likely to land in the next couple of months. Being able to say anything definitive to our community about where we might get to.
Well, I attended that meeting, Mr. Chair, yesterday, so I can give you an update over and above what Mike can now or later.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, Tonchi, I think you're probably better informed than I am at this point.
Okay, so the group met yesterday, and it was good. It was consultants, architect, Boffa Miskell, and then I think everyone's had transparency to who's attending this focus group or not. No? Right, okay. Then please don't put me on the spot to remember them all, but a lot of them are community, Waikanae focused or an affiliation with Waikanae. One of the ones that aren't but has a home here is Chris Wilkinson from First Retail and others. And it was good. We were introduced to work being completed thus far. It was sparse, which was a little bit disappointing, but also, there wasn't any preconceived mandates, which was good. They walked us through quite a bit of modelling that they have done with a consultant, a professional consultant who's very experienced with libraries nationally. So there was a lot of modelling based on the footprint, the activities in the library, book space, areas within a library, just to get broad brush square meterages, which was good. And then that sort of showed us a base model and a more of a premium model with square meterages applied. Then that showed us whether the existing building would suffice. And then there was 7 other options that were sort of around Mahara Place or the town centre. Interestingly, I'll just go right to the end. I get the feeling that the preferred location is in a position which could protract a library outcome because it's currently at the southeastern end of our township on a car park. Surprise, surprise.
Owned by Greater Wellington.
Yeah. So when you look at the rationale, of the best practice square meterage for a library. And it's not just a library, it's a library, and it could be a custom centre, and, you know, whatever. Could have, you know, could have living or whatever. I don't know. But that was that sort of sparked a lot of bright eyes in the room. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, you know, I asked them very early on, is there a recipe for a town centre? Because Bothwell is expert in, you know, town planning, and is there a cluster requirement to have, you know, linchpins like a gallery, a supermarket, and a library clustered together, or separate around a town centre? So we're sort of encapsulating and making the town centre interesting. And the answer was probably the latter. And that's why I think people's eyes sort of lit up. Why have we got level parking on premium land, you know, when there's an opportunity to have a linchpin there connecting the river, which is, you know, an element of Waikanae and our town centre, as well as the hills and the sea. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, but next meeting's in about 3 weeks, and it'll be interesting to see how that group and their discussions with staff and other stakeholders sort of extrapolate.
So yeah, 2,500 square metres is a substantial footprint. If it's 2-storey or multi-storey, it's probably not so significant. But
so the optimum is not to go over 2-storey. 3 is, it's not ideal. You know, we've got a mix of demographic. We've got our elderly community, and then we've got our youth. I was very, you know, I was adamant that intergenerational would be the key. There's a big opportunity for our youth and our elderly to blend. There's a lot of learning there, you know, and because, you know, our town centre is dying. It's still dying today. So I think everyone accepted, and it was quite cleverly put by Leo Cameron. He piped up before anyone else when Alison Law put to our group, if the preferred option protracted a library, you know, how would we feel about that? And he piped up first, and to his credit, and rightly so, it's so important that we get it in the right spot. That time is not really of essence, you know. And it's not just not having the library. It's also, you know, the best place to not cause any more suffering to the real retailers and the community that can still habitate the, you know, the Mahara place proper. So I was encouraged by the meeting. For meeting number 1, it was good, and there was some good contributors.
So, Tonchi, if I can ask, did they relitigate some of the options that were put forward to council last time through the expert advisory group, or is that?
Yes, its current footprint, purchasing next door to increase its footprint, 2-storey, 3-storey, over. You know, the western side of the new gallery, i.e. between the gallery and Waikanae Health, along the car park by your premises, James, all over the place. One place they didn't go to, obviously, was the main road, which I I get now. I mean, we should, we don't want to lose a linchpin like a supermarket. We've got two, and we should still have two. And you know, that land or any land around there that's privately held should be left at large for, you know, for future development, you know, for big retail. So that's why they didn't go there.
Was there any discussion, Tonchi, about residential above it?
A little bit, and Richard, the interesting thing about Mahara Place is, and I put that to Boffa and the architects, Athfield, it's such a pokey L shape. I can't get my head around it right now. Let's say half a dozen people went in there and adopted 6 stories. I'm not quite sure what that would look like, you know, to I'm not sure what that would look like, bulk and location and shading and so on and so forth. So there was a reluctance to go in there and tamper with something that possibly could be developed residentially, vertically, but go to the fringes of the town centre and act as a linchpin to the Waikanae entrance to the river entrance of our township. We've got the gallery, Seawood, and then we've got commercial at the northeastern. And then we've got the rail hub on the other side. You know, there were quite a bit of, you know, I suggested, you know, a car park garage. You know, Waikanae, in my view, needs to grow up, and the rail hub is still going to continue. It possibly could go to Otaki, but you know, our population will grow. People will want to come to the train station. I'm not necessarily advocating for car parks or that, but the car park, I agree. The car park, Wellington Regional Council car park, is possibly in the wrong place and taking precious town centre space. The other thing is, we've got our cultural centre there with the marae, and that connectivity with a library, an information centre, and then outdoor space, which, you know, reaches out to the marae. It all makes sense. I'm actually quite excited about it. I'm actually quite excited about it. I was, you know, I'm the first to say some of the meetings are, you know, a little bit tardy, but this one was good, and there was energy in the room, and people were, you know, put their views respectfully, and there's nothing but a abundance of opportunity. Just needs to be worked through. So the task of the project team, they want to get a decision or a recommendation to council before the elections, which I think is extraordinary. Now, what does that mean? Probably pointing at the site and asking councillors for a recommendation for, you know, for at least the site before October.
Sounds positive.
Yeah, so thank you, Tonchi, for a, you know, really good detailed synopsis of the meeting, and I'm so pleased that it seems to be going well. So it was my understanding that maybe before you guys started having the meetings, or maybe it's still continuing, that there was going to be some work with the community to look at actually what the library was going to look like. Has that been done, or is that still going on?
No, public consultation will still take place, and that's likely to be in late June.
Okay.
But what they want to, yeah, how it's going to be framed up, Councillor, over the next, you know, month, I'm not quite sure. More shall be revealed. But the group, the steering group, will.
Are you running that?
the councillor Jamie Delichis. So and then it'll go out to public consultation, for further input.
Oh, because I thought beforehand that there was going to be some work. Maybe Mike can make some comment here about, what does the library look like? Is it, well, I don't know. And I think it was going to be a general district-wide approach, even though there were some questions that this was actually a Wi-Fi library.
Yeah, so quite right, Councillor. There was a piece of work around reimagining the library. However, that is entirely linked into what Tonchi's talking about. So it's not standalone. It is definitely feeding into the mainstream of the actual project itself.
Yeah, that's all taking process now. Yeah.
Oh, so has that not been completed, Mike? Or
no, I don't believe it has been collected, but it is well advanced. I forget the name of the consultant. I'm sorry. She might have been in the meeting, Tonchi.
Yeah.
Sue
Stevenson or Sutherland or something.
Sue, it's on my computer, but I'm going to lose you if I go there. So
yeah, okay.
Sorry. So yeah, all that councillor has been rationalised, and they've been working. Athfields and Boffa have been working with the consultant and coming up with. It's all extrapolated to a base model. And a baseline model and a bit more of a premium model, and we're all leaning to the other, not the base, because that's confined and constricted. That needs to be, whatever we offer up to the community by way of library should have a slide rule footprint, so it can grow and become multifunctional as the community, as the community needs shape it.
Yeah.
So all that work it's all encapsulated in what's happening.
Okay. Now. Yeah. So I'm pleased to hear that, because, obviously the I suppose the purpose of the library has got to fit within the, the location and the purpose have got to, mold together.
Yeah. Yeah. And right now our primary purpose is to. We've got an opportunity. We've got an opportunity in the long-term plan. There's money there set aside for this project. It's a linchpin, and let's keep it rolling along. And once those linchpins sort of take their form, gallery soon. Supermarket, although it's aging, it's there, and commercially maybe something will happen there in the not too distant future, and then wherever our library ends up, and then energy, youth, and our elderly and our community need to get back into Mahara Place and let it breathe, because that's what's going to revitalise it, commercially.
Yeah.
So Tonchi, on a more strategic level though, like the key thing is getting this across the line before the next election, because actually we're going to have a whole new set of councillors in place.
Yeah.
So.
True in Waikanae though.
Exactly. But what's the confidence that they'll have a paper ready by June, July?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. Yeah.
It was tabled at the meeting that ideally a recommendation would like to be put to the outgoing council at the end of this triennium, and I'm certain that is the ideal location.
Okay.
Beyond that, there needs to be that commercial, negotiations and purchases, and that's a whole another gamut of that will be in the new.
I guess it's a bit easier if it's offered local authority as opposed to private landholders, though. So there is a
could be easier dealing with regional council rather than 5 private owners who own shops.
Yeah. But there is a spike strip in the Greater Wellington Regional Car Park too.
What does that mean?
A spike strip. So when you do a development, there's a small piece of land that's the size of a footpath that goes right through the middle of
Okay. I don't have the plan on me, but this is.
Yeah, so the local iwi actually have this my understanding, own the spite strip that goes through that whole. So essentially, from the marae out to about where Bahana, if you sort of go out on an angle to Bahana Motors, there's a strip about 1.5 meters that goes through the entire development. So north to south. Yeah, north to south.
Yeah, I don't think that this would compromise that. The development, the way, and look, we're talking about purple boxes, just showing the 2,500 or whatever it is, and it was main road frontage, just past the fish and chip shop, heading south. There's a lot of grey in the rump of the car park, and then green sort of around the Pahutakawas and Mariah Lane for other sort of other thinking around those areas. Yeah.
Well, it sounds good. Sounds good. So
yeah,
I'm enthused to see that we might even get a library. So. No, thanks, Tonchi, for the update. It's really invaluable. So really appreciate that. If you can just keep us all abreast of what's happening, and hopefully we can get something to shout about as a community board to our community, saying that something's really going to happen. So that's awesome.
Michelle has a hand up, James.
Yeah, sorry, I can't really tell with the hands up on the way my screen's working there. So, Michelle.
Just a quick question. I wondered if the membership of the group could be shared with us, and the draft terms of reference be shared with the community board members, and also who attended the community focus group meetings, just so we've got a bit more visibility on that.
Right, so I'm not sure I can do that. I know that last week or the week before, we were asked by Alison Law, Mike, if we had any problems with our names being on this group, because an official information request was seeking attendees of the group and the terms of reference, I think. I'm not quite sure. I had no issue with it, so I didn't respond. Can you answer that?
Yeah, I can't, but what I can do, Michelle, is I'll go back to Alison and see what the story is there and find out for you. I would have thought that was information that would be made available, but there may have been someone who objected to that. But if Tracy, if you can make a note of that, and if you're okay, Michelle, I'll find out for you and come back.
And if so, I've been remiss because I've mentioned a couple of names this evening, so sorry.
Thanks, Tracy.
Okay, so if we can draw, is there any other hands up there? No. If we can move, Mike, if you can just elaborate a little bit on the Old State Highway 1, because it looks like if July is going to be the start date for the clip-on, that's not far away. So
it's finished. It's completed.
Really?
It is. And can I just say this is advice from an external party. So confidence levels kind of vary depending on the party that we're dealing with. So whilst we have confidence, it's not all that high. And
there were 3 men in high vis standing at the end of the bridge this morning. So
that's good news.
That's progress.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question there? Do you say the revocation work will be completed in July?
If you look at the first paragraph under that section, it says the Waikanae River Bridge clip-on work is scheduled to be completed by 11th of July.
Yeah, just the clip-ons, yeah.
It does say 2022 as opposed to another year,
right.
But
that's right.
Obviously there's, so I had to say, I was talking to a staff member today about this, and he thought they're actually starting work within the next couple of weeks. I made the comment that, and I think he also made the comment that they were talking to comms, and I said it was really important to give the community as much leeway as possible, because there will be disruptions with traffic movement over that bridge. And so it's important to, to get that information out as soon as practicable. But I suppose also too, some things it has been delayed some time, but I think, giving a 2-week start date, probably is more, seems to be more realistic than some of the other dates that we've had.
Appreciate that, Councillor. So that's always been the board's view on this, is the importance is around the disruption in the communications. So I'm pleased to hear that someone independent of me has been giving you the same advice. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I'll leave it in your hands to drive the rest of the, it is under an urgent nature, so I'll say O1 road naming.
Oh, so I beg your pardon, Mr. Chair.
So with regards to the road naming, I think, will we be involved in the naming? Because previously the Waikanae Community Board had proposals for potential rod or recommendations for the naming of the sections within our purview. So I'm assuming that will come as an agenda item to us in due course.
I assume so, but I prefer not to assume, so I'll double check that and give you some proper advice on that, James, rather than, but yeah, I assume that will be the case.
Yes, so just to follow up on that, so James, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the delegation was given to the community board to make recommendations to council.
It was, yes.
Yeah, as opposed to the community board making suggestions.
Yeah, it's an unusual one, because under our delegations, we're allowed to name roads on our
yes
thing. So I think you're right that previously under State Highway 1, it had a special course of discussion that we would actually delegated to come up with the names that they were put forward by council, and we would either approve or disapprove for them to be ratified by council.
I think it fell apart when it got to council.
Yeah. So just Mike, I guess that's something for a future agenda item, if we can make sure that we do have some visibility of that.
I'm just looking at your terms reference now, and it does specifically exclude the former state highway. So but I'll have a closer look and come back with it. That doesn't mean you can't be involved in the decision making, just who is actually making the decision.
No, but as Jocelyn described, it actually did have, we were afforded the ability by council to make the decisions locally with a recommendation to council. So it'd be great if that can be maintained.
Yeah. So Mike, do you know when that delegation was put in place?
So it's not dated, but shortly after the last election, Councillor.
Yeah, so maybe it's been changed since we went through that process, which would have been a number of years ago now.
I will check.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think Tonchi has already described some of the detail with regards to the Mahara Trust Gallery. Is there anything more you want to add there, Tonchi?
Did I send the minutes? No, I didn't send the minutes for the gallery. I don't want to send those minutes, but you've had there's a lot of operational stuff in there that that's probably not, it's not for our forum. But everyone's had the update for the gallery construction. So that's on time, on program, they say. It's there have been COVID-related delays with contractors and supply, and that's apparently eaten any contingency in program. So, but the contractor seems to feel that they are going to be okay, but what are we now, May, targeting sort of late November. Yeah. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the next 2 months brings by way of the program, particularly coming in with some inclement weather. It's open to the elements. Yeah. And then there's obviously the operational issues, you know, fiscally, which the gallery, David Shand, is working through with staff, Mike and staff. So, and when it's appropriate, I'm sure that that they'll come back to the gallery. Although they haven't, Mike, and I must say that David has sort of chased a couple of times. So kind of 6 weeks is, you know, 6 weeks has gone by, 2 months. So.
Oh, look, I'll give him a ring tomorrow. There's definitely stuff happening, Tonchi.
Okay, okay. I think David would appreciate, David and Kevin and Gordon Sharoff would appreciate an update.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Now the funding, you're all aware in the press last week, another significant contribution to the gallery fund, and it brings them closer to that sort of 100,000 figure. Not quite there. They'd like to be sub 6 figures. They're not quite there yet. So as a community board, I've taken a pack. Maybe I should, at the next meeting in about 3 weeks' time, grab some more packs and we go out there and we try to, you know, hit some individuals or you know, 500, 1,500, and it all makes an impact. Yeah.
So that's a good idea, Tonchi. But I suppose, as I mentioned at the last community board meeting, this is actually a district-wide gallery, and I'm just wondering, you know, whether, you know, the gallery is actually reaching out to the whole community, and, you know, whether this, for example, is an agenda item on the other community boards.
Okay, and I mean, and that's actually a valid question. I mean, Waikanae, because it's domicile in Waikanae, we've made a significant contribution. Are you suggesting, Councillor, that the gallery board should go and seek some financial assistance from other community boards?
Well, I don't know, but I think, I'm not sure whether other community boards are aware of the situation, the financial issues that are going on, or even, you know, I don't know. I can't remember who actually else gets the updates on the gallery. I can't remember. I haven't looked. I read it, but I don't necessarily always look as to who gets them. But it's just, you know, giving oversight to the whole district, you know, of where it's at, both in terms of building and you know, just trying to gather a bit more money.
Worst time to go and seek money right now.
I know. I suppose really, you know, maybe as a learning it, you know, maybe anyway.
I'll have a chat with the board and see whether it's a good suggestion that they do go and talk to other community boards or community board chairs. And
or even councillors for that matter.
And the councillors, yes.
Yeah.
And how we can reach out further afield district wide. Yeah, that's a good idea. Leave that with me.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Moving to the next item, the Coastal Adaptation Panel. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in that. Jocelyn sent me a note indicating that the meeting was on. They hadn't actually sent out an invitation to me, so I am now on that group's invitation list. So I'll be able to hopefully provide you with an update at the next meeting.
Okay, I'm pleased that you're on the meeting list, James.
No, thank you. No, thanks for the notification. They haven't actually notified me, so.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Tonchi's still got his hand up. Tonchi, was there something else?
No, I just didn't. These emojis. I'm sorry, Tracy. I'm new at this.
Mate, I think we all are, aren't we?
Yeah. hopefully we don't have to do it too long. Okay, so I think, Tonchi, you've given a pretty good outline of the working group there, and as I indicated, it's probably worth taking my name off there. I've been excluded because of perceived conflicts of interest. So, Tracy and Mike, if you can remove me from that as a representative of the board there.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, which?
So the library working group.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Got it.
Sorry, I've jumped. You, Richard, there for the Ferrazon Reserve Focus Group. Sorry, there. I was a bit eager.
Oh, my one job, and you take it away from me. We haven't had any formal meetings, but there's been a bit of correspondence going backwards and forwards now. Gareth Elof's in the role of Parks, and it was mostly around budget and how much money we've got to spend, because on the face of it, it appears that we've got quite a bit, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the resource consent that they are trying to get to fill in and soften some of the edges of the ponds. But that work has been sort of overtaken by the need to do some hydrology type work. So I think part of the budget may disappear on hydrology consultants, and because it keeps raining and the ponds keep filling up and keeps flooding Jocelyn's backyard. So I think there's a lot of work to do down there, because with global warming and increased flood events, we're going to have more and more rain. So the whole progress of the resource consent seems to have stopped.
Someone needs to clear their drains.
Yeah, there's big restrictions on clearing drains,
right?
Because you're actually doing work within a waterway, so you've got to get a consent to clear the drain, so we can get the consent to do the work. So yeah, there's work happening offline, but there's no formal meetings at the moment. Just the Arbor Day thing is being organised by Margaret, and I apologise if I kept Margaret on, because she did a heck of a lot of work last year with coordinating the schools, and I don't think she even proposes that she's going to be there for the main stuff, but she has done that coordination stuff with the schools, and it seems to have worked quite well. So why kick her out and me possibly having to do some work? That would never do.
So Richard, I have a question in relation to the budget for the Ferrazon Reserve. You mentioned that there was quite a lot of money that might be sucked up with the resource consent. Isn't that operational rather than CapEx?
Who knows? If it's part of doing a resource consent to amend the bunds and do capital works around the edge of the bunds, is that capital, or is it dealing with a flooding issue that is impacting on people like yourself who live down there? Probably Mike's the better one to ask about that.
Yeah, well, capital. Well, I suppose I'm just querying, whether it actually is capital, because to me, capital is stuff that goes in the ground. It's not actually the like mowing the lawn is all OPEX, versus actually putting seed down for a lawn is actually CapEx. So to me, this actually seems like operational rather than CapEx. So I'm just querying that.
Look, I don't know. I'm not across the details. Sorry, Richard. I thought your definition of OPEX and CapEx was spot on, but with respect to the work that you're talking about, I'll need to talk to Gareth and come back to you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Richard. That was really helpful. I think we've covered the the library issue I just described there before. In terms of the representation review, I think the Waikanae Community Board needs a pretty good pat on the back with regards to the outcome there. We've secured 2 councillors for the next election, which is a fantastic outcome to ensure that we've got fair representation. And I think we also need to thank members of the community who put forward their submissions and endorsed the need to ensure that we have effective representation and growth. So I think we've got a really good outcome there for Waikanae, and something I think we can all be really proud of as an achievement. And I look forward to looking around who's going to be around the table next year at council, and hopefully with Waikanae, with 2 councillors, we'll have a greater say in what happens there. And strategically, if people put their hand forward for a district-wide role for Waikanae, then we might have 3 members there or 4 members if people are clever. So it's all about strategic alignment there. So yeah, no, it's a really good outcome. So thank you very much for everybody's participation. And Richard, in your thoughts when you were at the submission with the representation review and local government. So I had some really good feedback from my neighbour in Waitarere, saying that they were really impressed with the submissions put forward for securing greater representation for Waikanae, and they were quite astounded at that we weren't given that level of consideration when it was first put to council. So yeah, it's a really good outcome.
Yeah.
So I endorse your comments, James. But Mike, just one thing I know that's still outstanding is where the boundary between Waikanae and Otaki is. Do you know if that's been landed yet?
I don't know, sorry, councillor, but I have to come back to you on it. In fact, I'm sure we'll come back to you in due process on exactly that.
I think that's for local government commission to come back on, actually, isn't it? It's not council.
Yes, it is.
So
yeah, it's just that I think, yeah, we haven't heard yet, and I think, yeah, it'll probably come through council. Well, I shouldn't say.
Is there not a council briefing on this in a week or so's time?
Yeah, I think there is, but I'm just wondering whether Mike had any heads ups on it.
No, sorry, no, councillor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my understanding is council has no decision making powers over it.
Oh, you know, it's just being told where it is.
So, and my understanding at this point in time, with what I know, is it's going to benefit Waikanae, so which is good. I can't say much more than that, but yeah. So we might not have a favourable conversation with our local members in Otaki. So moving forward there, status of the reserves.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can this item be removed now from matters under action?
They can indeed.
Thank you.
If we move to the second to last one, status of the reserves, I'm not quite, I think we've got a bit of a misunderstanding of the progress update text there. It's really relates to the community board raising concerns about the status of reserves, whether they were actually had reserve status. There's a number of reserves that were brought to our attention that potentially weren't reserves. Can you remember that, Mike? I'm not sure. When they say it's significant work for a 3-year planned with management plans, I think what we were seeking is just to ensure that the reserves in Waikanae were actually designated as reserves for this piece of work, as opposed to the other greater piece of work is the management plans. We recognise management plans need to be put in place, but we just wanted to make sure that some of these reserves were actually identified and classed under.
Okay, so that's a misunderstanding. There is there are some technical property issues across the whole district. So we had thought we would wrap it into the wider review, but actually if it's just a simple piece of work for Waikanae, then it's pretty easy for us to come back to you on that.
That would be great if you can. It's just making sure that the reserves that have been given reserve status are, because I think when we had a paper put towards the board, that there wasn't clarity whether that reserve actually had reserve status, particularly around where the men's shed was, and that's what drew this to our attention, that it wasn't potentially a reserve in the first place and it never received formal designation.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, so I was just following up on what James was saying. So I think there's two parts to this. Is one is whether these areas have been gazetted or not, and then the second part is the type of reserve classification they've been given, because I think there's about 5 or 6 different types. Is that in a nutshell? Yeah, so if they get gazetted, then it's the type, whether it's a recreation reserve or a whatever reserve.
Road reserve as well.
Yeah. So it's clarifying which ones have been gazetted and which ones haven't been.
Yeah, because I think this would address some of the issues that were being raised by the community with regards to the men's shed too. So it'll hopefully wrap up a couple of things too. So
yeah, for example, the Thousand Reserve, I think part of it was only gazetted a few years ago, way after it was set up as a reserve. So I suspect there's probably more out there than.
Oh, yes, there are. I can assure you there are. Which is why there's the big piece of work to tidy this all up in an omnibus. But we can zero in on Waikanae.
Yeah, that's different.
It'd be just good if we could. We're not expecting a big paper, just a simple matrix. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. So, and the last part about the park, I take it as read. And I've seen communication from Alison previous in an email indicating that this work's not going to really kick off until next year. But my concern is, that we don't lose visibility and traction of this, and making sure that when we go out to the community for consultation, that it's all in train and it can actually be, the investment can start straight away. So, and recognising that there's another election coming up, that doesn't get lost in the nuances of change.
Yeah, I think the board was, so the funding in the LTP, I think the board was concerned last time that might somehow disappear. So happy to leave this and we'll keep tracking it that way.
Indeed, thank
you. So, sorry, excuse me, Mr. Jet. So can I just ask a couple of questions just around formats? So a couple of places here we double up on things like the gallery in the library. Would the board be okay if we kind of rationalise this a wee bit so that we had these things spoken about and just appearing on the list in just one place, such as the gallery in the library?
Yeah, I've got no problem with that.
And just to be clear, so we're going to remove the representation review and the temporary toilet. I think, yeah.
And I think actually when I sent my email, it was at 1 o'clock or so, not 4 o'clock, was to actually ask the Waikanae Beach Hall and Somerset to be added to the matters under action. Please.
Well, I think that's going to be brought as a matter under action. It'll be brought for the next meeting, though, Jocelyn. So do we need that on the matters under action, because it's going to be an agenda item when they participate in our next discussion?
Yeah.
Councillor Pravanov, can I just ask why do we want to mess within the Servian boundary of a private developer? I mean, I raised the question with Mike and the community board last meeting, and I just wonder, can I take this opportunity just to live on that question about the surplus land and how that's going to flesh out? This evening we had some correspondence between us talking about connectivity, shared pathways, cycleways, for our community around the fringes of this development. I, for one, would be more interested in trying to, spend my time or the board's time on that rather than sticking my nose in a private developer's operational activity. It's just
so just to clarify, Tonchi, I'm not looking at that at all. It's about having some information about how the project is progressing. So, you know, like at present, it's a total void in terms of, well, unless I hear from, and I've heard things from various, you know, residents, but I think it's something that is going to affect our whole community. And it's just finding out when they're going to be starting to doing certain things. It's about timeframes. It's very much like, you know, what we've got from many of the other points.
Well, there's a community liaison group, so we'll all know when things are happening, when we need to know.
Yeah, but
what I'm more interested in is there's surplus land, and there's an opportunity for us to, you know, to have an interest in a good outcome for our community by way of recreational activity and so on and so forth. I respect what Mike said last time, that there's probably some probably some fences that we shouldn't cross into, and I get that commercially, but you know, the elephant in the room is 9 hectares of a 25 hectare site is going to be an operational village. Beyond that, something's going to happen. And if we can get some good race coursing cycleways and bike tracks and connectivity to our beach and our village, town centre and north south, well, that's really all I'm interested in.
And by having it on here, those things can be included. You know, I'm not.
No, you're
trying
digging
to
into
play
operational matters, which
I'm
I don't
not.
think we've.
I'm not.
Okay.
Touchy.
Well,
I'm
I'll
not.
leave it at that.
I'm not. But as I said, you know, like I have no idea when, you know, they're starting work. I have no idea what type of work it's going to be, and I think it's all going to have impacts. And so it's just useful for us all to have it on, you know, basically as a standing item there, so staff can update us with, you know, what is potentially happening, because of course.
But Councillor, we're not a community liaison group or a conduit for such an activity.
But
so that developer has a mechanism, a community mechanism, and stakeholder mechanism to communicate what they're doing and when. It's not the business of the community board.
I tend to agree.
Oh, you probably have direct contact with the liaison.
Please, Councillor, do not direct me or me personally for any relevance to the Somerset development. I have no interest in it. All right. What I do have interest in is a community benefit beyond the fringe of that development, and council are working with that developer in the coming months, and that's where I think the community board should have some interest, so we have a better outcome for our for the functionality of you know, of the fringes of that development.
So Tom, to take this next thing, how do you propose that the board could do that though?
Well, Mike, that meeting that meeting is a start.
Yeah.
Not in the community board forum, but you know, at council, in an informal capacity. Is a good place to start.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. So how about we sort of start exploring some of those.
Are we going to do the same thing? Are we going to do the same thing for our reader developments in the Nara development? They've got resource consents issued. They've applied for resource consents to build 24 units by the end of the year. I mean, what business is that of the community boards? As long as they satisfy their statutory obligations, we're sort of morphing into something that we're not, in my view, that we shouldn't be morphing into.
It's about just knowing what's happening, not actually playing with what they're doing.
Well, we have limited time and focus, and I'd rather focus on things that we can tangibly get interested in and have outcomes, rather than chasing this you know, kitten up a tree. Sorry.
Well, if I may say so, Tonchi, I have to say I'm the only person from this community board who's actually submitted the list of activities I've done this last month. So to me, that shows that people either aren't doing anything or they're not interested. Sorry.
I completely disagree with that, Jocelyn.
Well,
I'm really involved. Just because I haven't put a piece of paper in front of it, the elected members does not indicate that we haven't been engaged in the community. But taking that, Mike, if we can coordinate. Just wait, Tonchi, if we can coordinate a meeting as we agreed to at the beginning with Somerset, and then hopefully we can start identifying where we might be able to get some credible solutions that will benefit our community. I think that's the best way forward. Yes, it's helpful knowing what's happening and when they're starting, but they're a commercial operation. Their plans and operations will change. It's not our role to say who and what when's happening. It's like somebody going wanting to know what Richard's doing with a development and Coastlands, when it's going to start and why, and the community board having oversight of it. I don't think that's appropriate or proper for a community board.
Are we aware on the eastern suburbia of Waikanae, there's substantial multi-unit residential being mooted there? I mean, we seem to be pointing at one stick, but not at another.
Yeah.
So I'm just not prepared to go there.
Yeah. Tochi?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I know this was raised at the very beginning and we've sort of talked about it a little bit more. Update on Waikanae Beach Hall. So Mike, when will that be forthcoming? That high level sort of matrix.
So that's coming to your next meeting, Tonchi. We
okay.
Currently have consultants doing that work. It's just not completed yet.
Okay. So that's the beach hall, and through you also, Mr. Chair. Is it possible to talk about the beach toilets and changing rooms?
What, at this point of the discussion?
We'll get them as a discussion, at least on circulating on the Waikanae Community Board agenda. I don't want to detract from a linchpin community centre, but which will come in time. But year in, year out, the beach swells with visitors, and they're shoddy.
Probably the most appropriate mechanism for that is with the upcoming annual plan, and putting a submission and a request for funding, or whether it gets additional investment. I don't know what the scope of the work would be to do that, but that is the vehicle would use that.
Yeah,
so.
And I'm not suggesting anything other than it could be as simple as a lick of paint and a minimal spend for the next 2 to 5 years, or it could be a new facility. I've got no idea, but they are, how old are they? Someone must know. I don't.
Probably 30 years old, 40 years old. Mike, I don't know, you might be able to. What's the best approach with regards to taking forward Tonchi's query? But my understanding is it's the annual plan.
Can I suggest first, so probably comes under me, what I can fairly simply do, Tonchi, is have a look at where those facilities sit on the program, in case they're up for a renewal or maintenance or replacement, and I can report back to you offline if you'd like to determine, to all of you offline, to determine what, if anything, you would like to do.
It's a worthy thing to keep baiting, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that draws our meeting to a close.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, really sorry. Just before you do that, there's just one thing I wanted to from last time that I need to update you on, and that's the $20,000 that you asked me advice for, that each community board has for to fund as it sees fit. So we have been tardy in bringing you advice around that. It's the same for all community boards, so I apologise for that. There are some guidelines that are imminent. Now, apparently in extenuating circumstances, it is possible to carry forward the money into the next financial year in extenuating circumstances. So we're working through it with Janice, but the intention is that we'll bring some advice to you in the next couple of weeks around how best to you can actually use those funds. But looks at this stage, and I'll confirm this, so it doesn't need to be spent by 30 June. I think you've got the opportunity to do that in the first quarter of next year.
Okay, that's good. Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Jocelyn.
Thank you.
Can I just ask Tracy where we're at with the advertisement for the Waikanae Capital Fund, whether that's going out soon?
Thank you, Richard. Yes. I had withheld sending information to you because there's one more thing I'm waiting from the comms team, but I can confirm that our website's been updated and we are now receiving applications. I've not received any to date. Advertising has been arranged for Kapiti News and the Otaki paper. The one thing that I'm waiting on from our comms team is a blurb that I can send to each of you board members for you to circulate to your contacts in the community. If there are groups or clubs or anyone that you are aware of who might benefit from putting in an application to this fund, I will shortly be sending you an email with appropriate wording and so forth that you can circulate as far and wide as you possibly can to ensure that we get lots of applications. So just to reiterate, the website's live, the web applications are live, advertising's now booked, and the only other thing that we want to do is for you guys to circulate it, obviously update your Facebook page and things like that.
Thanks, Tracy. Sorry. Oh, go, Tonchi.
One other thing from me, Mr. Chair. Recently, we awarded quite a substantial amount of money to Anna Carter and Pritchard.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah. Can we have an update about how they've travelled over the last 5 months?
I can certainly ask them for a progress report.
Okay.
So
I made note of that.
Tracy and Mike, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, Tracy, I think I just spoke to Mike directly. Just with regards to the Capital Improvement Fund, we typically get the same entities applying every year, and whilst it's great, it is normally the Waikanae Bowling Club. It is normally, about 3 other entities. The men's shed. We've got Montessori. About 4 or 5 entities apply consistently every year. I'm just wondering how we can greater extend the reach. It's just, whilst they're absolutely commendable organisations, I worry that all we do is the people who are knowing to apply for this are always applying, and the reason why some of these organisations are so successful every year is that they know how it works. They know how to get the funding in place to say they've got a 50% deposit. So if any other board members have got some ideas how we can expand that, it'd be great to see if we can put that in motion.
As I noted earlier, Mr. Chair, our comms team is preparing a blurb, which I will send to each of you for you to forward to all of those organisations in the community that you think might benefit from making an application. So that's for you guys to be proactive on connections that you have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Fiona. Tracy, for progressing this. So I'm just wondering, just the mechanics of things. So when is the closing date, and is our last meeting in mid-June going to include this?
Yes.
As well as other funding?
Yes, I've timed it so that I'll have plenty of time before the application's closed to prepare the report, which will come to your June meeting.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. So is there any other issues that board members like to raise at the moment? No? Okay, I conclude the meeting closed at 9:03. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mark.
Chair.
Everyone.
And thank you, Mike and Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy and Mike.
Too.
And the support team in behind.
Yeah, and thank you, Fiona. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Fiona.
Night all.
Bye.
Night.